We're live! I don't know what it is, I just get bored when I drive. I get really bored. And I have nothing better to do when I'm driving than make a video, but the reason I make a video is because I have nothing better to do when I'm driving than think about stupid stuff that comes across my head. And one of those things that has driven me nuts lately is government in all its levels. You know what really annoys me is in any given location that you go. Hey, what's going on, Wild Bill? Think about this for a minute. Think of where you're standing right now, right this second. There are no less than about 5 law enforcement agencies that can come and arrest you. No less than that. You've got your state police or your Department of Public Safety, whatever city you're in, the county sheriff, the constable. Then, of course, you've got potentially all the federal agencies, FBI, ATF, the IRS police. Depending on where you're at, you may fall within your local university law enforcement or university police department jurisdiction, your local independent school district police jurisdiction, the Texas Rangers if you're here in Texas. I mean, think about it. These are all the different cops that have supposed authority over you where you're standing right this second, or in my case where I'm driving right this second. These are all the people that can come with guns and murder you for any reason whatsoever or no reason whatsoever. So yeah, I'm using hey, Dallas Citizen Watch, what's up? Eggman, how you doing? Yeah, I'm using the forward-facing camera or the backwards-facing camera, so it's all backwards. I wish there was a way to fix that. I wish these cell phone companies would fix that. But anyway, so I mean, just think about that. Think of all these law enforcement departments that can make your life a living hell where you're sitting or standing right this second. Hey, Tanya, how you doing? And that's not even what I'm really wanting to write this video about. So my dad lives in San Antonio, commie San Antonio, and I don't say that lightly. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, at least 2 people on the San Antonio City Council are admitted socialists. So that just means the rest of them are closet socialists. I know there's one good one there. There's one good one for sure that I know of. So other than that, you've got 2 admitted socialists and several other closet socialists, and really a lot of those are communists as well. So my dad sends me this message. He sends me an email, and he owns his property outright. He's lived in that house almost my entire life since he got out of the Navy, and his house is paid for. He owes nothing on it. Of course, it's not his. No, it's not his house. He paid for it for 30 years, and he keeps it updated, and he makes sure that it doesn't fall apart and all that. It's not his house. It's the government's house, right? I mean, he's got to pay the government's extortion fees on it, because if he doesn't pay the government extortion fees, oh, I'm sorry, property taxes, for those of you that aren't in that don't understand the lingo, then any number of those law enforcement agencies will come in and point guns at him and force him off of the government property there that he's been paying for 30 years, that he worked his entire life to own. Well, my dad's a CPA and works out of his home, perfectly legal. Well, he gets a visit last week, and it's one of these code enforcement officers, a code, shows up and says, hey, we understand that you're operating an office out of your home and we'd like to inspect it. And my dad being the noble patriot that he is, who raised me right, tells him to pound sand with a plastic shovel. I don't think he used those words exactly, but he basically told him, get the hell out of my house, or get off my property. He's not going to let the government come in and inspect his house. He's a CPA. He's not breaking any laws. Well, he gets a letter this week from the Code Enforcement Division, and that letter says that, hey, we think that you're illegally using your home to make a living so that you can pay for the home that we own, and you wouldn't let our guy in, so we're gonna come back on July 30th. And we're going to inspect again. And I guarantee you, what I told my dad was, well, you should send a letter back saying, hey, on August 30th, I'm going to re-kick you off my property. What kind of a free country do we live in? Where, first of all, the mere fact that you operate a business out of your own home, in other words, you want to be able to make a living and provide for your family, the way that you know how, the way you've been trained and educated, and the way that makes you money and able to take care of yourself. What kind of a free country do we live in where to be able to do so, and I'm not talking about illegal activities, I'm talking about freaking, he's a CPA, guys, a CPA. And the government thinks they have the authority to come in there and go, well, we want to make sure that you're making money the way we say you can make money. That is where to go. I just saw something. Yes, Tadao, that is so true. Those are your slave quarters, not your home. And that's exactly the way the government treats it. That is not your home. That is, hey, how you doing, Steven? That is, private property is the ultimate symbol of freedom, and if we don't have that in this country, we have nothing. This is why I completely agree with abolishing property taxes, because as long as there are property taxes, you don't own your property. So much for life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, which, for those of you that understand history, you know that the pursuit of happiness meant the ownership of property. And John Locke, which is where that came from, the original saying that was going to be in the Declaration of Independence was life, liberty, and the pursuit of property. Or life, liberty, and property, excuse me, not pursuit of. Life, liberty, and property. That's what the pursuit of happiness is. The pursuit of happiness is the ownership of property. All right? You have a right to that. And when government thinks, one, that it can tax you on your private possessions that you've already been taxed on when you purchased it, and that if you don't pay those extortion fees, that they can seize that property that you paid for, that you pay taxes on, then you do not live in a free society. And then when you have that property, that those slave quarters, which is called your home, when you live in those slave quarters and you decide, you know what, I need to be able to pay for these slave quarters, so I'm going to work out of my home and try to earn a living. Well, if the city thinks it can come along and say, well, no, you're zoned as a residential area, so you can't work out of your home, despite the fact that the zoning laws specifically say you can in most situations. So what do? They don't stop there. Nope, they don't stop there. They don't stop with the fact that they want to inspect my father's house to make sure, I guess, that he doesn't have, what, I don't know, child sex slaves crunching the numbers for him as he's doing payroll for people. I don't know what the heck they think they're doing. So he also, this week, goes outside, and my dad's got an 83 or 87. I can't remember what year it is, but it's a Nissan van. They don't even make these things anymore. It's pretty much a classic. I know it's weird saying 1987 is a classic vehicle. Some of you young people are like, man, that is old, but not for me. I mean, heck, I was 13 years old when that van was made. But he goes outside, and there's a sticker on the vehicle, or a little placard thing that says, we believe that your vehicle is inoperable, and therefore it violates this section of the code because it's a inoperable vehicle or whatever. Now keep in mind, the vehicle is not on grass. It's not like it's all taken apart, like it looks like a heap of junk. It's a fully intact van, and yet the city is threatening to tow his private property off of his private property, which is in his driveway. And I'm not going to argue whether or not it's operable or not, because it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter if it's operable or not. We have a right to the disposition, and there are Supreme Court cases about this. We have a right to the disposition and possession and ownership of our own property, not the government. The government doesn't get to decide when something that we own is no longer of value to us or worthy of ownership. And who the hell does the government think they are, that they can trespass onto your private property and steal your private property because it may or may not be working? This is the problem with government. And here's the other problem. People don't care. This is the government is supposed to, and I'm gonna use these words lightly, is supposed to be working for you and me, not against you and me. They're supposed to be protecting liberty, not violating liberty. And there is nothing more quintessential to liberty than the ownership of private property. And it sickens me that there's a city, not only in the United States, but in the state of Texas, that believes it has the authority, good morning, Wolfman, that believes it has the authority, the right, the privilege, the whatever, to one, think that it has some sort of power to walk into a man's home. Yes, I know, his slave quarters, since he has to pay extortion taxes on it to own it. That has the power to walk into a man's home and demand to inspect how he lives when he is not a threat or a danger to anyone. And then that same government thinks they have the power, the authority, the whatever the hell you want to call it, to walk onto that private property and steal property because it may or may not be running. And they think they have the authority to create man-made rules and codes that control how we handle that private property, or what the disposition of that private property is. You know, it's funny. I look back at history, and I'm a history major, and my focus when I went through school, through my state-sponsored brainwashing, was the Revolutionary War and Texas history. Those were the two things that I focused on as a history major. And I'm telling you, if you look at our Declaration of Independence and you look at the Declaration of Causes that's underneath, that's a part of the Declaration of Independence, the things that are happening here in Texas right now pale, or I'm sorry, what happened in the Revolution to lead to the Revolution pale in comparison to what's happening right now. You want to talk about courts not being represented, and you know, King James controlled the courts, and King James's troops, they were given special treatment, and they were extradited to be able to be held to go to court. And that was one of the things that the people didn't like, was that the courts were corrupt. Well, the courts are corrupt here now in Texas. They didn't like the fact that they were being taxed without representation. And let me tell you, it was a small tax. We're talking about a 4% tax is what our ancestors went to war for. We pay 8% taxes just in sales tax here in the United States. And they were angry about a tax on tea. That's not to include your income tax, although in Texas we don't have an income tax, but the federal government steals your money. Then you've got your property taxes. Then you've got your fees to be able to exercise your right to travel. So your right to travel tax, which is called a license. You've got your Second Amendment tax, which is called a license. you know, we're at, if you think about it, you add all the taxes that you pay in life, you're paying about a 50 to 60% tax rate. 50 to 60% of all your money goes towards taxes in some form or fashion. The King James government stole private property. They went into homes and quartered their troops there. How is that any different than a code enforcement officer coming into my father's house and demanding to see his office? Is that not a violation of the Third Amendment of quartering troops? If I have to let a code enforcement officer into my home, is that no different than quartering just because it's temporary for the time that he's in there? It's still quartering, still a violation of my Third Amendment rights. His. And yet, we the people and the communists in San Antonio continue to get away with this, and we continue to accept it. We the people continue to accept the fact that our city government is doing this. And why? Because people are sheep. Do you know why these laws are created? Because some neighbor didn't like the fact that his other neighbor didn't cut his grass until it was 4 or 5 inches tall. And we can't have grass higher than 3 inches tall in this city. Now, that's not an issue with my dad. But I've heard from people since I started talking about this that they got cited because their grass was 4 inches tall. Why is that a code? Because some douchebag neighbor, citizen, who doesn't believe in liberty, decided to petition government and go, hey, we can't have people being allowed to have grass that's taller than I like. We need the government at gunpoint to force people to cut their grass. And we need government at gunpoint to force people to keep their cars off their grass and not park in the street. So it's interesting that we can sit here and complain about this, and I can complain about it because I fight it. Anytime there's some stupid ordinance getting talked about in my city council, you better gosh darn believe I'm there fighting it. And I'm not only fighting that, we had a stupid ordinance that said we couldn't have a tattoo parlor within the city of Temple. So did I just sit back and go, well, that's the code, guys? No, I fought, and I demanded hearings, and the city council finally brought up this repeal of the tattoo ordinance, and the city council decided not to vote on that tattoo ordinance repeal, and so I kept complaining and writing, and eventually it was removed because people did something about it. All right, so that's what you got to do. If you don't like it, do something about it. But unfortunately, too many of you pansy-ass citizens out there think that government needs to make you feel better about yourself. You need government to force your neighbor to paint his house. You need government to have the power that if you want to add a garage to your house, you've got to get government permission. You know, in San Antonio, if you want to fix or maintain, you want to fix your fence, or you want to erect a fence, or anything like that, that if you're going to repair or replace or build more than 25% of your fence that's on your property, that you've got to get special government permission.
Half a mile, keep left at the fork to continue.
Is that really the government? Is that what freedom is about? So, and it pisses me off. And let me tell you something, code enforcement. Monday's your day, huh? I'll tell you what's gonna happen. Monday, you're gonna go back to my dad's house, and you're gonna say, hi, I'm from the government. I'm here to look at your house in violation of your constitutional rights. And my dad's gonna tell you to pound sand with a plastic shovel. And then what? Then what are you gonna do? What are you gonna do if a bunch of armed people are sitting in my dad's yard enjoying a nice barbecue on Monday? Don't do it. This might sound petty, but our founders went to war for far less than what you're doing right now. At some point, people have got to... And listening to people, when I discuss this on my Facebook page, Listening to people ask questions that are completely irrelevant and ignorant. Oh, well, is the vehicle operable? Does it matter? I don't care what the code says. Does it matter? It's my private property. Oh, but does your dad operate does he have a license to operate does it matter? It's his private property. It's his livelihood. Does he not have a right to exist? Oh, but is the vehicle a nuisance? Does it matter? It's on my private property. Register? Does it matter? It's my private property on the roads. It's not on the public roads. Listen, people, stop asking stupid questions. The question is, does it matter? When you sit here and argue the nuances of what the code says and what the law says, you're basically saying that the law is legitimate. Stop legitimizing the law. Stop legitimizing a violation of your constitutional rights because you want to live in a nice neighborhood. We all want to live in a nice neighborhood. I want to live in a nice house. But you know what? I don't want my neighbor telling me what to do with my property. So guess what? I don't live in a neighborhood. I live where I have freedom not to worry about that kind of stuff. All right? If you care about what your neighbors think, then don't have neighbors. If you care about how your neighbors are going to treat their property, then don't buy property near other people. Ask, exactly like Texas Rose just said, does it matter? It doesn't matter. Ask this also. Am I hurting anybody? Is there a victim to my 4-inch tall grass? Am I hurting somebody? Is there a victim for the fact that I have a vehicle that I may or may not have driven in several years and that may or may not be operable? Is there a victim? Am I hurting anyone? If the answer is no, leave me the hell alone. That's it. God bless everybody. Be safe and be free.